Welcome to Chisel and Compass, where deep-rooted wisdom meets the crossroads of faith, entrepreneurship, and mindset. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and he's Dr. Justin Moseley, the Mindset Doctor. And we're here to help you refine your vision and navigate life's toughest challenges with purpose-driven strategies and real-world insights. Each episode, we're going to dive into faith-driven leadership, business growth, personal development, and the mindset shifts that drive lasting success. Now, whether you're building your business, enhancing your leadership skills, or pursuing personal growth, this podcast equips you with the tools and perspectives you need to lead with conviction and live with impact. This isn't just about where you're going, it's how you get there. So let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Chisel and Compass. Welcome back to Chisel and Compass podcast. I am one of your hosts, the real Jason Duncan, and our co-host, Dr. Justin Moseley, the Mindset Doctor. We're here with you today. We're going to be talking about really kind of the crux of what Chisel and Compass is really all about, is we're the intersection of faith and business, because we're both entrepreneurs, we're both men of faith, followers of Jesus. And today we're going to talk about how do you integrate that? How do you integrate, incorporate your faith into your business without proselytizing, without being a goody two-shoes, without doing that. But also, we're going to talk about this idea of like, how do you set goals in your business and try to achieve those goals? But where do you leave room for God's math to work? Where do you leave room for him to interact with that? So, Justin, this was kind of an idea that you had to talk about. So I'll let you kind of kick off the concept and then we'll dig in.
Yeah, I've been having this conversation with some people lately who are believers, but they kind of separate it. They're like, I'm a believer, but then I'm just focused on business. I know my KPIs, I know my goals, I know my targets, I know what I need to hit. So they're like, I'm the business person here, and then I take off my business hat and I become the spiritual person over here. So it's like, how can we combine that? And not where you have to go out and preach the gospel in your business, but how do you have the faith? One, are you actually praying about your goals, praying about the numbers you're supposed to hit? What is the heart behind why you want to hit this in your business? And are you asking God for guidance as you steward the responsibility of growing your business? So that's kind of the overarching theme. I want to get your thoughts on this, Jason, because I think about and I am a believer, if I call myself a Christian, but if I never read my Bible, I never go to church, and I don't act like a Christian, yes, I would still be a Christian, but that's not what God's called us to do. God has called us to live a transformed life and to live a life as Jesus led the example for us to lead. So with that being said, I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to surround myself with people that are believers as well that can continue to encourage me. So when it comes to business, are you still bringing that part, the part where you're spending time with the Lord and asking for advice and seeking guidance, seeking wisdom, spending more time praying than just the next action you have to take? Because action is important. You can't just sit there and pray and then just hope you're going to hit your goals. So there is a balance here. Some people are all go, 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 go without the prayer and the contemplation of the next best step. Because we can get there by might and power and force, but God math can come into play and actually get there a lot faster, because it may be us thinking I need to take this step and that step and that step. And God can be like, no, it can reveal it to you in a moment. If you just do this one thing, you can cut 6 months off of the goal. You can hit it 6 months faster if you do it this way. So are you spending the time in prayer, seeking guidance, seeking wisdom in your business? I'm curious for you, as you've built successful businesses, how did you bring faith into your business?
Well, I would say first, before I answer that directly, I would say that this idea of compartmentalizing our faith is terrible. I think that faith is not in a compartment. Faith is pervasive. Faith should be everything. You don't compartmentalize the fact that you're a man or a woman. Like, oh, I won't be a man over here. No, because it's who you are. You can't compartmentalize that. It is part of who you are. So if you're gonna claim to be a follower of Christ, if you're gonna be a claim to be that, there isn't a compartment that fits neatly into, and you only pull it out when you need it. I realize that is a lot of people's realities, but I don't think that is what was intended, and it's certainly not real. If anything, we should be compartmentalizing our business. There's a lot of times when you hear people say, hey man, it's just business. Okay. that statement can be used to justify a terrible thing that just was said or done.
Yep.
But I think in general, that statement really is important. Hey, it is just business.
Yeah.
Listen, I like you. I appreciate you working for me, but you're fired because you don't do your job. And they're like, well, yeah, I thought we were friends. Well, we are, but this is business. Like
Yep.
our friendship is one thing, but this is business.
Yeah.
I don't think we should ever be able to do that with our faith. I don't think we compartmentalize it. So how do we incorporate that? Like, how do we keep God at the center of our business goals without losing sight of practical growth and profitability? How do we show our faith without alienating people or coming across as preachy? You know, I had a friend of mine who was a very successful businessman years ago said, you know, Jason, he goes, one thing I do to answer this question, he goes, I just keep my Bible on my desk in my office. He goes, I don't really do anything with it. I don't really that's not the Bible I read all the time. He goes, and that just lets people know that, oh, okay, there's maybe a little difference. Now you have to follow that up with the actions. You can't
Right.
be cussing everybody out and sleeping with your secretary on the desk. You know, that's going to send mixed messages. But I think just integrating faith into who you are in your business. You know, we talked about it on the last episode. You mentioned the fact that I lead the Exeter Club Mastermind, and the Extra Club Mastermind is not a Christian mastermind. That's not what it is. I have followed Jesus. You're part of my mastermind, and you're actually one of our certified coaches. You follow Jesus. As a matter of fact, as far as I know, all of our certified coaches are followers of Jesus, and many of our members are followers of Jesus. And I pray at the end of many of our meetings, but it is not a Christian mastermind, and I don't position it that. That's just how I behave. That's just
Yeah.
who I am. And if you don't like it, you don't have to be a part of the club. That's just
Yeah.
how it is. So for me, it's just second nature, man. It wasn't this way always.
Yeah. And I think looking back at our practice, so I own a health center here in Hendersonville and chiropractic, functional medicine. And back when I was in practice, it still runs this way today, but in practice, we've got worship music that's playing. But we live by this principle, like we don't do the healing anyways. It's a health center, but God does the healing. God put a power in our body to heal. We just help people heal faster using God's laws of health and healing. So that's part of our message. And we have worship music playing. We have a sign that says, hey, if you need prayer, just ask. There's been many a times where patients would ask for prayer and we would go into a room and I'd pray for them right there. So sometimes there's opportunities right there in front of you where you can use that, but you don't have to bring that into your business. But we just decided to do that. And that was what was in alignment with us. And we had a mentor early on in our business who did the same. And he was told years ago by somebody who was a mentor of his in the past. And he said, you know what, you would be really successful if you get rid of this God stuff and you just focus on growing the business. But if you keep that in there, you're going to fail. And he told the mentor, he's like, you know what, then I'll fail because this is what I believe and this is what I'm going to do. And he gave everything to God and focused on God and just blew up his business. It yeah, we got really successful beyond what he thought. So it's like, that's like just giving the credit to God and just living your life as a vessel. But like you said, you're not putting your beliefs on someone else. You're just like, hey, this is who I am. And people, we have people have different beliefs all the time. We have homosexuals, different things, and we love on them because that's what Jesus would do too. And they feel so loved in that place. They don't feel and it's cool because in this day and age we live in, they don't feel judged. They still feel loved. And I feel like that's the way Jesus would want them to be treated. So we treat them with love, care, compassion. And so whether people are believers, non-believers, it's okay. They know it's not a place of judgment. We're not condemning anyone. We're just living from the place where we think this is what God's called us to live. And this is how we're going to bring this into our business.
Yeah, as entrepreneurs, I think faith, well, for anybody, not just entrepreneurs, faith is personal, but it doesn't have to remain private. It doesn't have to remain like internal, and I can't display that. It can be the cornerstone of everything we do as a business owner. I have some fond memories of building my business back, a decade, 12, 13 years ago. And there was one time when I had an employee who was having a really serious marriage issue, and I happened to find out about it, and I was able to I don't know if counseling with him is the right word to use, but like sit down and really make him consider some things he hadn't thought about before. And to this day, praise God, he and his wife are still together and everything seems to be fine. But but had I not taken that as a responsibility, like as a man of God, like it's my responsibility to help. Now, what I didn't do is I didn't go in the office every day. It's okay, everybody gather around. We're going to do our 15-minute devotional, and you're required to be a part of it, whether you believe in God or not. And look, if you do that, more power to you. But I don't think that's right. I don't think Jesus ever like strong armed people into listening
Right.
to him.
Yep.
I think he made it available, and if you wanted to listen, and if people were open to it, he'd go deep. He'd
Yep.
go real deep with them. So I think that we need to incorporate it just as a general, natural, normal part of who we are. If we follow Jesus, there should be no excuses about or trying to get around the fact that we follow him. It is who it is who it is. That isn't going to change the way I treat anybody negatively or positively. It's just is who it is. Now,
Mm.
one of the things that you mentioned, Justin, was about this idea of goals and how do we leave room for God. And this is what's interesting to me. And I don't know if this is my excuse for not being as diligent and as I need to be on some of this stuff, but I've got big goals for my business, financially and personally, what I want to accomplish. But I don't live and die by that goal board. I don't live and die by those sheets and go, well, we were supposed to bring in 3 clients this week. We only brought in 1, or we were supposed to bring in 5 clients last month. We didn't bring in but 2. Like I don't get upset about that. And I don't know, maybe I should, because I totally, totally, totally trust that God's going to take care of me.
Mm.
Doesn't mean I'm not acting, but I totally believe that my finances are going to be covered. At the end of the day, like he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. All perfect good gifts come from him through the glorious riches in Christ Jesus. I don't worry about it. That doesn't mean I don't work hard, but I don't worry about it. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like, how do we leave room for God to do that?
Yeah, I think part of it is, where is our identity? Some people's identity is in the level of success that they achieve, or the finances they have, or the house, or the cars, or the things. And for me, a good example of identity was just in my job before. I was a chiropractor and I blew my shoulder out. And it's to the point I couldn't even lift my shoulder. So I couldn't physically lay hands on people, which was like, I felt like that was my calling. That's what God has me here to do. But what I realized was, no, that's not my identity. That's not who I am. Who I am and what I was called to do was make a positive impact in people's lives. Chiropractic just happened to be a vehicle for me doing that at the time. But I'd put my identity into that's who I am. And then that was taken away from me when I couldn't even lift my arm. And then God just opened doors for other ways for me to make a positive impact in the world. So I think part of it is, where is your identity? Is your identity to ring the bell? I hit the goal. I had the house. I did the vacation. Or are you seeking God? And I know, because we've been meeting for a couple of years now, like, you're seeking God's guidance for the direction of your business, for the goals that you set, for the things that you want to provide to your family and the legacy you want to leave. So I think that's where it comes down to, is, where's your identity? My identity is in Christ. And then he's showing me my talents, strengths, and abilities that he's given me, and how I can use them to make an impact in the world.
I think part of what people have a problem with is that there are so many well-meaning followers of Christ that like they take it upon themselves as their job to be this defender of God in the workplace or in the community. And they want to stand up and tell people, well, you better do this, because it could be over any minute. He could come back. You better be ready. Like I get the idea, but like God, I don't believe God needs defending. I think he's pretty capable of doing that himself. Our job is to present the gospel in a way that makes sense. It connects. It's real.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Jesus did. Jesus connected with people in real ways. And where they were doing any street preaching was in a place where it would have been common for somebody to stand up and talk. Today's street preachers are standing up in places where it's not common for people to do that. And it's awkward and weird and nobody likes it. And the only people who like it are the people holding the signs, and then they think they're better. And there's this arrogance that comes along with it. So in the workplace, I think a lot of followers of Christ don't do anything about their faith because they think if they do, they're going to be seen as that. And I don't think that's true. I think that you can just be a normal dude or gal, whatever you are, like a normal person, leading your business, treating your employees with kindness and respect, demanding they do their job, Like, you don't just say, okay, well, you didn't do your job, but I'm a nice guy, so I'm not going to fire you. No, I've fired a lot of people. If you don't do
Yeah.
your job, you're fired. That doesn't mean I don't like you. It means I don't
Yeah.
like you as an employee. Like, you
Right.
suck as an employee. You got to go. But I'm also going to make sure that they understand that my faith is important to me, and I'm not gonna disregard my faith just so that I can get along in a business setting.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, and they're biblical principles, but they're just morals and standards and character traits that we have as believers. We just live our lives showing those character traits to others. We set an example for them. So it doesn't have to be, again, preaching the gospel to them and do you know Jesus as your Lord and Savior? You don't have to ask that question. You live a life. This is an example for them. And you encourage them to become better people. And the cool thing about it is if there's non-believers, they start to open up. They see the type of life, they see the fruit from your life by living these character traits. They want to be like you. And a lot of times it can open up to the conversation is, I know faith is important to you. Can we have a conversation about it? So I've seen that a lot. In on the last episode, we talked about the circles we put ourselves in. I've noticed that in some of the circles that I've gotten into where I do talk about my faith and how important that is to me. And there are other people in the group would be like, hey, I want to learn more about this. That's something I'm lacking in. So just living your life as an example to others, I think that goes back to just Jesus. Jesus led a life that was an example. And if we can follow his lead and live a life that can be an example to other people, that's what we should do in the workplace.
Yeah,
And
I believe that we can practice our faith in the workplace as the owners, as the entrepreneurs, without proselytizing. I mean, your faith doesn't have to be shown just because you lead a devotional or you lead a Bible study or you lead a company prayer. And listen, there are companies where that works and that's how they set the things. So I'm not talking about that, but I just don't want you to think you have to force that, because faith can be demonstrated through your decisions, through your actions, through the integrity with which you operate business. I use this only as an example because we're talking about it, but recently, I'm not going to give the details because I don't want to get too deep in the weeds. Justin, you know exactly what I'm talking about because I shared it with you. But there was an opportunity I had with a vendor of mine where I could have I could have leveraged what that vendor was providing to me to get something for free from another vendor, but those two vendors were in slight competition with each other. And so from a business perspective, totally above board, there was nothing unethical from a business standpoint, but it didn't set well with me from an integrity standpoint, especially someone who claims to follow Jesus, because I looked at that and thought, would I want someone to do that to me if I was that vendor?
yeah,
And ultimately I had to make that decision. Well, when my internal team kind of knew that I made that decision, nobody said anything. But there's an impact when they look and say, Jason could have saved $10,000 by making a different decision, but he didn't and ended up spending 10,000 because of that decision. That makes a difference. So I think we can share our faith without proselytizing. We can just show in how we act and have the decisions that we make. We can show compassion, and we can do good service and provide ethical practices in our business. And I think that proves out, hey, we're followers of Jesus. I have
well, to
one.
speak to that too, while you're there, because I think it meant a lot when you went back to that vendor and said, you know what, I thought about this, and out of integrity, I decided to do it this way. And I think that meant a lot to him. You'd be like, you know what, I trust you even more. You're a man of integrity because you made that decision.
Yeah, and who knows what impact that may have down the road, but certainly a lot more than if I'd asked him the first time we ever talked, do you know Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Let me tell you about you. Like, I think it has a lot more impact in him watching me play that out in real life than it
Yeah.
would be if I tried to proselytize. I had I don't think anybody likes being grilled on their position of Jesus, especially in the United States. Now, if you're in a different country and they've only heard of him, they don't really know. Certainly that probably plays out a lot different in the continent of Africa, maybe in the country of India. There's certainly, it plays out a lot different, but not here. Not here. It doesn't work. I was at a restaurant just recently, and for people that know me, I wear a cross necklace. I always have. I've got it on right now. Can't see it because of the shirt's covering it up, but like I wear it all the time, and it's normally on the, if I'm wearing a t-shirt, it's on the outside of a t-shirt. For me, it is my daily reminder when I put that on that I follow Christ. That is what it's for. It's a cool cross. I like it, but I've always worn it. I don't expect anything to happen because of it, because I'm not doing it for other people. It's for me. every day when I put it on, it reminds me. I was at this restaurant, and this older gentleman walking with a cane, so he's quite a bit older, and he came up to me very nice. He goes, "I really like your cross." I said, "Thank you." He goes, "What does that cross mean to you?" And I told him, I says, "Jesus. That's the only thing it does mean, right?" And he goes, "Well." I forgot the series of questionings, but I felt like I was at an inquisition, and he was doing this from a place of pure integrity. I am not blaming this guy at all, but nobody likes to feel that way. And I followed Jesus, and I felt weird about answering his questions, like, "Where do you go to church? Like, are you saved?" And they're like, well, I'm like, "Well, yeah." I mean, so it was just an odd, and he did it out of a place of purity. And again, it's difficult to say this because he's not here to defend himself and his motives.
Yeah.
But we don't have to do that in the workplace. We don't have to go and after we get somebody hired in the interview, we bring them in. Are you saved? We need to talk to you about Jesus. Like,
Right.
I don't think that's necessary. And as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I think it probably does more harm than good in our culture.
Yeah. And I want to hit a different side of this too, because I think there's a lot of Christians, believers in business that self-sabotage their business because they don't want to go after big goals, because they don't want to be looked at as greedy or selfish, or it's about the ego. So what advice would you give to people like that who, like, they want to go big. They want to have a business that thrives and maybe exit without exiting and provide a life for their family, but because of their Christian beliefs of, no, I need to humble myself, and they have this like, I need to be poor mentality because I follow Jesus, versus that's not what the Bible says at all. So how can they balance that if they have the mindset of, man, I want to hit this, but you know what, when is enough? Maybe I should settle for this.
Yeah, well, that word "enough," man, I hate that word "enough." I don't. I think we have been so poisoned by well-meaning religious people that somehow got a sense that the scripture teaches that if we follow Jesus, we're going to be poor, that we have to live in poverty because Jesus didn't have any money. Well, I'm not certain that's true on a lot of different reasons. As a matter of fact, the podcast of my show that just came out today, the day we're recording this, is called "Was Jesus Rich?" And it's a very interesting conversation that I think everybody. So just Google "Was Jesus Rich? The root of all success." You'll find it. And it was a great conversation I had with a guy, and he brought up some interesting points. But I think this idea of enough is rooted in this false sense of poverty that we believe that followers of Christ shouldn't have money. And that's a money story, which that money story leads to, well, I have enough, whatever that means, and I'm not going to shoot for more. And it leaves a lot of folks that follow Jesus in a place of not accomplishing what God has set aside for them.
That's
Now,
right.
not every follower of Jesus is going to be a millionaire. Not every follower of Jesus who's a business owner is going to be a millionaire or make millions of dollars. It's not everybody. I don't think everybody's called to different things.
Yep.
But if that's your gift and that's what you're given, think about how many families you could bless if you ran $100 million business.
That's right.
I mean, that, like, don't limit yourself. This word "enough," what does that even mean? Like,
Yeah.
enough for what? You? Enough for your family? Enough for your kids? Well, does that mean you don't care about your neighbors?
Yep.
Where does enough stop? I mean, oh, you got enough. According to who? According to what? I don't know whose standard. Somebody told me a long time ago the definition of a rich person is somebody who has more than you. All right, that's true, right? Like,
Okay.
so we you like, what does that mean? Well, you got a nicer car than I have. Okay, well then you're rich. Well, you got a nicer house than me. Well, you're rich. Well, I got more money. Well, I'm rich. Well, what does it mean? Like, I don't
Yep.
understand where all that. This is insane.
Yeah.
Put it in perspective, people. And here in the United States, we're in the top, what is it, 1% in the world in terms of what we got. Even if you're only making 30 to 50 grand a year, you are still richer than most people in the world. So get over your high horse about this enough thing. Make your goals big. Go out there, make a big impact. Affect as many people positively as you can. It takes money to make this world go round. You can't do it on just being nice to people. It takes money to do it.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, people limit themselves. It's a limiting belief, one, but they limit what God has called them to. And I think about a mentor of mine. He before COVID, he was doing crusades, Pakistan, Uganda, all these third world countries that he would go into, like the villages, backwoods. But it would cost like $100,000 to put on these things. But it would be a field full of 50,000, 100,000 plus people that have never heard the gospel, and he was able to preach the gospel. but that takes money to be able to do that. And I think about Mother Teresa. People think, oh, she just lived poor. Mother Teresa was flying around on people's private jets to place to be able to take care of these poor, hungry kids. So it took money for the ministry. So if it's a limiting belief that if I had too much money, I'm going to be greedy, flip that. What if you had too much money and you could use that excess money to bless others or to further the gospel, provide Bibles for people? It's one of the things my mentor, he's got a nonprofit that gives Bibles to people all over the world. So it's like the more money you have, the more impact that you can make. I think it does come down to a condition of the heart. It truly is. Where is your heart set? So you got to have your mindset, but where's your heart set? Because your heart set on, number one, your prayer life, your walk with Jesus, making sure the goals that you have are from the Father. The desire of your heart, desire is of the Father anyways. It starts there. Are they your desires, fleshly desires? Are they of the Father? And if he's given you this dream to build a big business and make a big impact, don't limit that. Go for it with the heart set of he's going to provide, and I'm going to be able to, out of this abundance, I'm going to be able to bless others. I've got an affirmation. I actually got it from Bob Proctor that I've kind of shifted it for me, but it's like money flows to me freely and easily from multiple sources for my benefit and the benefit of those I want to bless. And that means so much to me. Just that last part that I put in there, the people that I want to bless, because I don't want money just for me. I want it to bless the people around me, to make a bigger impact, and to look at when I get to the end of my life, that he looks at me and says, you ran your race. Well done, good and faithful servant. And that I was actually a good steward of the money that was provided. So that's where I'm looking at is, okay, I've had another mentor who said, why settle to be a millionaire if God's called me to be a billionaire? Because imagine if I'm doing this with millions, what can I do with billions? So it's all a mindset, and I think it's a heart set as well.
Yeah. Well, I think we all, as business owners, we have a platform that we have been given, and we need to use it. I was talking to a guy on my podcast recently, on my other podcast, and I always sign that podcast off with Jesus is King. That's my sign off, and I do it a lot of times on this show too. But I did it on that show, and I didn't tell him ahead of time that I was doing it. So when we got done, like I did my deal at the end, and then said cut, and we stopped the cameras and everything. And he got up. He goes, "Man, I'm so glad to hear you say that." He goes, I do something similar at the end of all my live broadcasts. I say, I can't remember what he said. He said something like, "Jesus loves you, and I love you," or "I love you, and Jesus loves you too." And he goes, "I do that too." And he goes, "And here's why I do it." And what he said next was really cool. He said, "If God gave me 100,000 people to talk to on Instagram or YouTube, I'm going to make sure that I at least drop a little bit of praise for the one who allowed this to happen in the middle of it." So I thought that was a good perspective. He wasn't doing it out of an obligation or anything like that. He said, "Look, this is my responsibility that Father's given me to give opportunity to these people to hear maybe one thing positive about Jesus on this show." So more power to him. I'm all for that.
And with that being said, there is a risk. There is a risk that you could say that and somebody gets offended. And I think back in our practice, it was actually my sister was working for us back then. And she just emailed a new patient, never been to our office before, needed to reschedule an appointment. And so she was just emailing back. And of course, we can get that switched. Have a blessed day. Because she said, "Have a blessed day," he just lit her up through email. "You should never be telling people to have a blessed day and blah, 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 religion, this and that." And it was like, she was in shock that somebody responded like that. So we had to have just a conversation around that, because some people, they can get offended by those things, but that shouldn't cause you to back down. Like if you truly want to have people to have a blessed day and that's your opportunity to say that, let it rip.
The reason I'm laughing is I had a guy on my podcast, and he will never listen to this one, so I'm not worried about talking about it. But it was a great episode. We had a great show, and I went through the podcast exactly like I normally do. Signed off the same way I did. We chit chatted a few minutes after the show was over, and he went on his merry way. I got an email like the next, I don't know, it was an hour later from his assistant, and it was like, "Hey, we enjoyed being on the show, but," and like you mentioned something about Jesus in your show. We wonder if you could cut that out before you publish it. And I was like, this is my show. Like if I'm on his show and I said that, you cut out anything you want,
right?
Like, this is my show. Why would I do that? And so I thought, well, how do I respond to this? Because I don't want to sound like a jerk.
Right.
But the answer is no. So I went to ChatGPT. That's my friend. That's my ghostwriter. And I just went in there and said, okay, this happened. This is what I want to say. How do I say it without sounding like a jerk? And it,
Yeah.
I wrote a nice little letter and sent it back, and they were fine.
Yeah.
But I thought, what? Like, this is my show, and all I said was at the very end, Jesus is king. It didn't have anything to do with him.
Yeah.
So the people that get offended over this stuff, and I tell you, we could have a whole show about getting offended, like
Right.
politically, religiously, financially. Like, there's just what makes us think we have the right to get offended over everything, man? It's just
And
crazy.
that's why we have to be strong in our own beliefs, because a lot of people, they get a comment or an email like that and they start to question, you know what, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I should stop saying it. But then you don't get to impact the rest of the people that are on the show. And like you mentioned that guy earlier, if there's 100,000 people I'm talking to, they're going to hear about this. So don't let other people's opinions and them getting offended stop you from doing what God's called you to do.
Yeah. Can you imagine, man? Listen, as many people as we follow on Instagram, YouTube, etc. Like, if the people who truly follow Jesus, because there's a lot of people who follow Jesus that we don't know.
Mhm.
Like, we watch them all the time. We have no idea. We have no idea they follow Jesus. And I'm not saying it's wrong to do what they do to not let me know they follow Jesus. What I am saying is, how much of a difference would people perceive what is called the, quote, religion of Christianity if all the people who have big platforms at least mentioned it? I'm not saying you don't have to turn it into a gospel preaching show, but if you just mention it, how many people go, huh? Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know that. Because there's so many times you find out somebody, like, I am a follower of Jesus as you. So when I find out a famous person or an influencer, somebody also follows Jesus, like, all right, yes. Like, I'm excited about that. But what about the person who doesn't follow Jesus that found out that the person they've been following follows Jesus? Like, oh, well, okay. Well, I like everything they do. I want to wear the same clothes they wear. I want to go to the same parties they go to. Okay. Well, who's their God? Let me tell me who this is.
Yeah, I think this conversation goes back to the last podcast. We talked about who's in our circle. Because sometimes as believers, like you and I, we grew up in an environment where it's been part of our upbringing most of our life. We've been around it. We've surrounded ourselves with people that believe it too. But there's a lot of people here in America that don't grow up around it. That church isn't a normal thing, that God, Jesus, I don't really hear about it. So I think that goes back to something you mentioned earlier. We do have a platform, whether it's our business, whether it's our social media, our podcast, whatever platform we have, we should talk about it, because there's people out there that haven't been exposed to it. And they hear and they say, hey, I like this person. I like the way they live, the integrity that they have, all the standards and the morals that they live by. Oh, they're followers of Jesus. Maybe I need to look into that. You never know. That one thing you say could be the catalyst to them actually seeking for more answers.
And I would like to say, as we finish the show, I would like to give the caution on the other side of this. If you're going to say that you follow Jesus, you better follow Jesus, because there's one story that stands out for me, is that there was a family that my wife worked for back in the mid 90s, and they owned an apartment complex, and they were known as, they were a very influential family in that little town that we lived in at the time, and they were very much big parts of their church, and everybody knew it. So it wasn't a secret. It wasn't that it wasn't just that we knew, like, it wasn't that our inside information. Mm-hmm. And that guy was the biggest creep as a boss ever. Just terrible to work for, mean, angry, like threw something at my wife one time and cussed her out. Like, okay, listen, if that's who you are, got it. I feel sorry for you, but I got it. But don't you say that you follow my Jesus, because you ain't following my Jesus.
Yep. And I laughed because I thought of a story. So one of my friends from high school, I went to a Christian school, and he won the senior superlative best Christian attitude. And it's funny when he gets to college and he was like, man, that's the worst thing that could have happened, because he ended up going to Lipscomb, which is a private college. But when he turned 21, if he had a beer, everybody would just mess with him. I thought you were Mr. Best Christian Attitude. What are you doing having a beer? Or anything he messed up, they would just call him out on it. But it's so true. If you want to hold yourself to the standard, you need to be an example, because people can pick that apart. They can look at something. I know a lot of pastors that they smoke cigars, or they'll have a beer and they'll drink alcohol in certain situations. But sometimes they're like, I need to be careful who's watching me, because I don't want to them to twist like, oh, he's just out here getting drunk or he's doing this or that. You got to make sure, because people are always watching. If you got kids, your kids are always watching you, but your employees are watching you. The people around you are watching how you're living. And are you just saying it or are you truly living it?
Yeah. And as we finish out today, I am 100% certain that what he is not saying is you shouldn't drink or smoke cigars, because we'll talk about that on the show in the future.
That's right.
But the point still stands. People are watching. I'm always watching. What was that lady on the what was that movie, the kids movie, Monsters Inc.?
Oh yeah,
I'm always watching.
That's right. Keep that in mind.
All right, Justin, this was a great conversation. He's Dr. Justin Moseley, the mindset doctor. I'm the real Jason Duncan. Thanks for tuning in on Chisel and Compass. This is where we talk about how faith and business collide, and we're going to fill in the gaps that a lot of these mindset people talk about, but they never bring in the reality of who Jesus is in this. And that's what we want to do in this show. And so if you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a review. And if you don't like listen, that's cool too. Go down the comments in the YouTube, type it up. Let's hear what you got. Let's have a little pushback. Let's see what that's like. Cause we're not perfect. We don't know everything. This is just our opinion. And you are only subjected to it by your voluntary listening to the show. So thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next one. See ya. That's a wrap on Chisel and Compass for today. For show notes, resources, and more, hit up chiselandcompass.com and follow us on social media. You can find me at The Real Jason Duncan, and you can find Justin at Dr. Justin Moseley. Until next time, keep your chisel sharp, your compass true, and never stop building what matters. This is Chisel and Compass.